Owning a boat comes with a number of perks, like being able to fling your favorite fishing rod around. And here's another perk. Geico's boat insurance covers your boat and your belongings. And with specialist support from agents that are as passionate about boating as you are, there's so much value that you'll want to high-five someone. But not while you're holding your fishing rod. That's a prized possession. So hold on tight with both hands and keep it covered through boat insurance. Get more with Geico.
This is episode 367 of Wheel Bearings. I am Sam Abul-Salmon from Guidehouse Insights.
And I am Nicole Wakeland from CarBuzz.
And I am Roberto Baldwin from SAE International.
And Nicole, what have you been driving?
It's going to sound like I'm cracking open a beer. Really, guys, it's a bottle. It's a can of bubbly.
It's not a beer.
No, we can see her on camera. It's
just bubbly.
It's a can of beer.
It's a can of...
It is
not beer. It's a can of Bloody Mary mix. It's morning. It's Sunday.
Whatever the heck I don't like this one. Anyway, okay.
It's a Bloody Mary.
I was in, we write for Sunday. I was in the 2024 Lincoln Nautilus hybrid. And guess what I still hated, Sam?
Let's see. Was it the door handles?
No, not the door handles.
No. The dashboard?
No, dashboard was okay.
The seats?
No, seats are pretty comfy too. 9,000 ways adjustable.
Was it the thing that you had a headline on your story about on CarBuzz, which was the ridiculous, stupid touchscreen controlled vents?
I hate them. Okay, so here's the thing. So I love this car, Lincoln. I love your Nautilus. I hate this feature. And my editor actually maybe put in that end of the story. I need you to say whether or not that would make you not buy the car. And I said no, but I'm like, dang. I drove it down like 2 hours to something yesterday with my family and back again. And I'm like, this is really freaking annoying. It was so annoying.
Because you touch it so much. You use it way more than they think.
No, that's not what Lincoln designers will tell you. They'll tell you people adjust it once and they never touch it again.
Nope. And so even, you know how you can, the funky thing, I guess, is you can set it, you can, turn the vents off, you can turn the vents on, you can slide them around on the screen to point at your face or whatever. But then you can do it so like they sort of wave almost like
oscillating fan.
Oscillating fan. And you can have it aim at your body or whatever. My husband's playing with all the buttons because I can't, because I'm going to hit somebody if I look at that screen long enough to change any of that. So he's changing it. I'm like, nope, that's still nope. I'm like, and at one point I'm like, feel my hands, and my hands are in the steering wheel. I'm like, do you see how cold my right hand is? Whatever vent is pointing at my right hand, can we please point it somewhere else? And I put my hand against his face. He's like, geez, okay, I'll move the vent. It was not going well. So those vents drive me nuts. Like seriously, it might be enough for me to say I wouldn't buy a car. I don't know if I could do it. So
it's so gosh.
It's just,
unless you live in a place where the exact same temperature all the time, day, night, winter,
and the sun never
summer,
moves in the sky. You're always driving the same direction.
The sun always has to be angled at exactly the same place in the sky, so that if it's suddenly warm on your cheek or warm on your face or warm on your shoulder, you're not going to move the vent to suddenly cool yourself off or warm yourself up. Has to be like that. What was that movie with Jim Carrey where the world was
Truman, the Truman Show?
Truman with a sun that never moves, just is completely static. That's what you need.
That's what you need. That's how that thing works great.
I hate those darn vents, except for the vents, which made me kind of stabby. I really like this car. This is really nice. So you get a choice of two engines. You have a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder with 250 horsepower, or you have a hybrid version of that gives you 310. And the torque goes up from 250 to 295. The engine is fine. It's actually a perfectly fine car to drive. It's nice to drive. It's very comfortable. It's very quiet. We had 5 people in the car for that trip yesterday. There were 3 adults in the back. They were comfortable. Like no one was squished, even with Russ, because he's 6'3", with the seats pushed back for him to be fine up front. My brother-in-law sat behind him, who's like 5'9". John was fine. So it's a nice, comfortable car. They thought it was fantastic. Like they really loved it because they don't, people.
They didn't have to adjust the vents.
They didn't have to adjust the vents, but they were watching me. They're like, "That's stupid." I'm like, "Thank you." So they really liked the car. It was interesting to hear their perspective. Like John was looking at it from the back seat. He's like, "How does that screen thing work?" And I'm describing it to him and like tell him what it does. And 10 minutes later, oh, that's actually kind of cool now that I've watched. Like he's not even paying attention to the conversation we're all having. He's fixated on that screen that spans the entire dashboard. He also noticed the steering wheel. It was funny to hear how long it took for regular folks to notice things. It's like, is your steering wheel not round? It is not round. Is that hard to use? No, it is not. Because it was something that if the sort of oval, I would say it's oval shaped. It's cut just enough so that you can see that the screen, I think it's 48-inch screen that spans the dashboard. Otherwise, if it was round, you'd have like a BZ4X situation where you can't see the instrument cluster for the steering wheel. So good on Lincoln for making the wheel actually not interfere with what you're trying to look at. So I thought it was, that was great. The pretty of this, you can't underestimate how beautiful the interior of this is. This is a truly beautiful car. And the base trim, it starts at just over $50,000. So you're getting a luxury experience, a beautiful interior. You're getting this nice, smooth, quiet ride for about a little over 50 grand. If you go to the top, like there's a big jump. So the Reserve, which is the mid-range trim, is 55. And then when you get to Black Label, you're at $75,000 almost. So it is quite the jump. But if you've seen the Black Label trims that Lincoln does, they're not messing around. Like they're truly, truly luxury cars. They get these themes like, and it depends on the vehicle, but like this one has a redwood theme and a chalet theme, and the colors and the materials and the designs inside all sort of evoke a theme. It's truly gorgeous. I like this. I really genuinely like this. I even like the scent cartridges that they have, and they look almost the size of kind of like an overweight USB, like little fat little USB sticks.
Like a little thumb drive?
Like a little thumb drive. They're inside the center console. When you lift the lid, there's a little pull down thing, and in there are where the 3 cartridges. You just snap them, boop, 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 right into place. And there's 3 of them that can fit in there. And there's I think 4 additional scents that you can buy beyond the 3 that come with the vehicle to begin with. And they're really nice. They like ever so slightly like give an aroma to your car, like can freshen it up. The funny thing is, if I don't know, perchance your daughter was like, is this working? Push, is this working? Is this working? Then you're like, woo, okay.
It's working now.
Yeah. She's like, oh, there it is. Like the whole car, I'm like, we're going to roll down a window. But it is kind of a nice thing. And I feel like with the sort of luxury car thing you're going for, little stuff like that, like being able to make your car smell like lilacs or, a fresh summer breeze or whatever is kind of neat. The seats, they're ventilated, they're heated, they're massaging. You can adjust them 9 zillion different ways. Overall, I like it. What an interesting thing here. I tried this and I've never heard this because I don't often have people riding in the back of the car. So there's Blue Cruise in this. And I tried out Blue Cruise when my daughter was just sitting in the front seat, and it totally freaked her out. She's like, I don't even like this. I don't even like looking at you, not having your hands on the steering wheel. I don't like it.
That's a smart child. You raised your child right.
Right, thank you. She's like, I don't like this. I'm like, but it's doing. I'm like, look, it can even change lane. She's like, it cannot hit the turn signal. She's like, oh my God, put your hands back on the steering wheel. Like, totally freaked her out, right? But then
Rose or Kit?
This was Kit. And she's like, that's really cool. And it does it, but it's totally freaking me out to not have your hands on the wheel. It freaked out my brother-in-law and his wife even more. I'm like, look, car can drive itself. He's like, it cannot. I'm like, you still have to be here, paying attention, ready to take over. However, hands off the wheel, foot off the gas, show them the whole thing. Interestingly enough, it made my sister-in-law sick. She got car sick with the Blue Cruise. And we sat there and I was like, what's happening? We figured it out. When it changes lanes, it's pretty smooth because we had a 2-hour drive. So we had time to be like, Nicole's driving, Blue Cruise is driving, Nicole is driving, right? So we have back to back. When I'm driving, and I'm assuming most people, I'm a smoother driver than Blue Cruise is in terms of my lane change. So it changes lanes and it's like, change lanes. It's a little bit aggressive. It's not out of control, but it's a sharp lane change. When I change lanes, it's lane change.
Smooth as butter.
So I'm smooth as butter. So actually driving with Blue Cruise started to make Susan motion sick. And my brother-in-law and my daughter both said the same, it's the lane change, Mom. Every time it changes lanes, it's too aggressive. It feels like you're aggressively changing lanes and then aggressively lining yourself back up in the new lane. So it made her and I had to turn it off. Not like it was constant, but just enough. Those lane changes I was doing in the kind of heavy traffic on the highway, it was enough to make her queasy. But as soon as I turned it off and I was just driving the same way, but just doing the steering wheel myself, totally fine.
Interesting. So you're a better driver than Blue Cruise.
Well,
I mean, let me rephrase that. You're a better chauffeur than Blue Cruise.
I'm a better.
There we go.
But I thought it was interesting because I've never had anybody, when I've used things like this in the front seat, say that it made them queasy. But I thought about it. I don't know if I've ever had anyone riding in the back of the car before to see how a rear seat passenger feels about how the car does that stuff. Have either?
I've had someone in the back seat while I was driving a Tesla and it did the automatic lane change,
How
and
did
then
it
it
feel?
immediately stomped on the brake, even though there was no one in the other lane. It moved over to their lane and then just
God.
stomped on the brake.
Oh, nice. Lovely.
So they, I mean, they didn't get car sick, but they were terrified.
They were terrified.
I have never had any other brand of car do that. Yeah,
What?
I've never, phantom braking.
Yeah.
Yeah, the weird, like when people are like, oh, but the Tesla drives so great. I'm like, these are the only vehicles with ADAS with an ADAS system that have actually scared me. I've had all these. I mean, I've had a little like oh, whoa, that was weird, but I've only had like in Teslas.
I've had
autopilot.
a handful scare me once or twice because they brake for no reason. Never come to a full stop, but I've had a handful that have gotten confused by the signs when you're getting off of a highway, especially if you're going up a ramp to get off a highway and there's just the green sign that says, exit 7 or whatever.
Yeah.
The one that's right there, sort of in the triangle between the road and the off ramp. Right there, there's a certain point where if I go by the sign sometimes, it for a moment thinks that the sign is an object I'm about to hit. I don't know why. And it's happened on multiple exits, but it's always like it almost feels like you're getting a brake check, like blam, oops, wait, no, sorry, you're fine. Never taken me to a stop, but it has done a really hard brake check that's scared me and a passenger for a second. But then it's like instant. It takes it, a second to realize I have made a mistake, but still scares you for a second because you're cruising along, hitting an off ramp at 60 miles an hour because it's a long ramp and suddenly bam, and you're like, ooh, nope, we're good. We're all fine here. Everything's fine.
I did the Mercedes lane keep assist is incredibly aggressive.
Is it?
If you go out of your lane, it shoves you back in your lane really hard. Yeah, so that's the other sort of, and it's like it's doing the right thing, but it just feels like, whoa, settle down, man.
It's not doing it smoothly. It's like it's waiting too long, and I've got something to talk about later that kind of ties into this with Bosch, but it's probably waiting too long and then realizing, okay, I've got too much error now. I've got to correct it as quickly as possible.
I have to save your life. It's like it's like your mom saving your life a little bit too. It's too aggressive. Yeah, it's the arm
being too reactive instead of proactive.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
You know what I like about the Nautilus is that the little slits in the side. On the interior, on the door above the speaker, it looks like Wolverine was in your car.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see that now, but now I do.
Like the first time I got it, I'm like, oh, it's the Wolverine car. Cool.
The Wolverine car. How of the moment too that you would say that, because
if they would just fix those vents, those stupid vents.
I'm telling you, when I wrote that story,
so much better.
And my editor's like, you have to wrap it up and tell people whether you buy the car. And I'm like, well, yeah, I think I would. It's like after 4 hours driving, I'm like, could have a little bit more on that.
The large screen, I'm still like, why? No one wants it. No one cares. It's just, hey, we got to do this thing. Okay, fine.
I don't think it's necessary, but the thing that surprised me and that did this first time I drove it, I thought it would genuinely be ridiculously distracting. Like it would just be so distracting that it would be like difficult to drive. You tune out the part you don't want. Really
it's I don't think it's distracting
because the stuff that's on the
doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Well, the stuff that's on the right side is pretty trivial stuff. So it's not really grabbing, and it's very low information density. So it's not grabbing your visual attention all the time.
Right.
I liked it as a time, but also your center in like here's the time, but also in your center. Yeah. There's a time, but because of this extra large screen, the center display is now down more than it should be.
Yeah, it is a little lower.
So now you're looking down more,
and so now you have to look down there to adjust your vents.
Makes it now So now you have to look down for actual information you want versus like, oh, it's like what's it like, what the temperature is. Mine didn't work, by the way, when I had mine. There was no connection. There's no internet connection, so it just kept telling me what the temperature was in like a week earlier somewhere else in California.
Another time a week ago,
it just didn't work. I kept trying everything, and I gave it back to the guys, and then when they came and got it, I'm like, hey, the connectivity isn't working. I'm like, it still says it's, whatever.
Maybe it wasn't.
There was a Santa Barbara driver somewhere around that area, because that's where the last time it had connected to the internet.
Oh my God. Oh, that's the other thing I noticed. So there's the seatbelt thing. Do you ever see that, the seatbelt warning, how it comes on in the Nautilus? Does it ever pop on your screen like somebody hadn't buckled their seatbelt fast enough? It's weirdly this little circle. And so, like, I want it to be a rectangle because that's what your car is not a circle inside.
Yeah.
And it looks like a little circle, and it has like the 2 front seats and the 3 back seats, and it has a little X or a green check. But all I can think of are like, okay, there's this ride in Disney World in the Animal Kingdom called Kali River Rapids, and it's like one of those water rides where you're the big round tube and you go over the water and you go through the fall.
Oh yeah.
It
I know.
totally looks like one of those, and it like spins on the screen. I'm like, oh, Kali River Rapids says that the person in the left rear seat is not buckled, and they're like, I'm working on it.
You're gonna get wet. That's
fine. That's all I can think of. I'm like, I've gotten it on an amusement park ride. It looks just like that. I don't know why it's round. It's very cute, but it's like, we're not in a spaceship. We're not in an amusement park ride. We're in a vehicle, and that's not how that looks. It's just weird.
Yeah. But did it start alerting you and beeping immediately as soon as the seatbelt was unbuckled?
The instant I turn on the car, like, people are sitting and it's like beep beep. I'm like, can you give them a half a second? In fact, everybody
give me a second.
It's like a symphony of sound. Like, at one point, like, the rear tailgate was closing and my daughter was buckled in. Like, it's like doodle-doo, 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 doodle. I'm like, what? I don't even know what these musical tones are trying to warn me of at this point, but it's like there's a symphony of warning tones happening in this car.
Yeah, when the other day or last week I was driving the Toyota Highlander, that one, when any of the passenger seat belts are unbuckled, it immediately starts beeping, like does not wait at all, and it's extremely annoying.
Give us a second. Come on.
Yeah.
Just a second. Because people got to get in the car. They got to take their things out of their pockets. They got to plug things in, because we're all traveling with at least one thing we got to plug in.
And then you have 3 people in the back. There's that shuffle. Like, you have to, like, the middle person has to plug in, buckle, and then you have to shift a little bit.
Where's the buckle at? Is this my buckle? Is that your latch?
I'm trying to buckle in yours. Why isn't this working? Oh, that's the middle. That's not the left. Yeah. There's
at the whole time. Boop, 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 boop.
Yeah. Exactly. Susan's yelling at it. Give me a second. She's like yelling at the car. So there's my time in the Lincoln Nautilus hybrid, which truly I did like the car. The only thing that really bothered me was that.
So give us a conclusive yes or no. Are the stupid vents a deal killer or not?
Is that a deal breaker, as Liz Lemon would say?
It could be. I kind of want to say I wouldn't get it because of that. I love the car, but it really bothered me. It drove me nuts. Me nuts.
I think the only car I would buy with that is the Taycan, because I love the Taycan so much, even though it has that thing. And even that is just like, come on.
I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I want somebody, like, is there a hack for me to break the vent front? And like, can somebody saw those and make it so I can just move them? Like,
all right. Robbie, did you drive anything this time?
I did not. I've been really busy, and the next week I'm traveling. I swear I will.
All right.
I'll be riding a motorcycle, but I can't talk about that till I don't know when that embargo's up.
Okay.
But I'll have that, and then the week after, I'll call in some cars.
Okay.
People are emailing me. They're like, "Hey, man, you want a car or what? What's going on?" I'm like, "Oh, hold on. I want to actually drive it. I don't want to just sit in my driveway while I'm in my house editing video."
Yeah. All right. Well, I very briefly had a Lexus GX 550, like maybe 12 hours or so, something like that. It was delivered on Thursday afternoon, and I drove it to the Honda briefing that we talked about last week on Friday morning. And while I was there, they came and picked it up. So I drove it for about half an hour, basically. And Toyota needed it for something. And so, Drive Shop, sent me a note and said, "Hey, Toyota needs the GX. So we're going to come and swap it." So they swapped it while I was at the Honda thing. And I got a Toyota Highlander in its place. So that's what I'm going to talk about, is the Highlander. I'll talk about the GX at a later date when I've had a time to spend more useful
than
time
just like commute to a place for 30 minutes.
Exactly. So the Highlander that I had is the 2024 XSE, which is the sportier version of the Highlander, a sportier trim, and it had the 2.4 liter turbo 4-cylinder, which replaced the previous V6 that they used to have as the up level engine in Highlanders. So no more 6-cylinder engines in Toyota Highlanders. The Highlander's an upper midsize 3-row crossover. The back seat, the third row seat it's pretty small, which is why they came up with the Grand Highlander, which actually has a usable third row seat. You can sit in the third row of the Highlander, but you won't be too happy about it. If
you're a tiny person, you could probably do it.
Yeah, kids would be fine back
Children,
there.
Yeah, throw the kids back there. Yeah. Throw the dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like us.
Yeah. So, we took that one to drive to Battle Creek to pick up our new dog. And it was a pleasant enough drive. The 2.4 liter turbo is not the most refined sounding engine in the world. It's okay. It's got sufficient power. But it's not, and it's reasonably fuel efficient in highway driving. I averaged about 25 miles per gallon with it, which is okay for a good sized crossover. And it's not the hybrid. The hybrid version of the Highlander will do mid 30s without any problem, but it's also not as powerful as the 2.4 turbo. But the current generation Highlander has the new Toyota infotainment system, which is really good for a factory infotainment system. It's got big 12.3 inch display. One thing I was not crazy about with the Highlander was the seat, the driver's seat. I didn't find it to be that comfortable. And
Really?
after driving for a couple of hours, I actually found my back feeling kind of sore.
Oh, really? That's weird.
Yeah. So, and this again, is repeat. Before you buy a car, do not buy any car unless you have sat in it and taken it for a drive, and make sure the seats fit you, because everybody's body's different.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some cars that you'll love how they feel, and like your spouse might hate it, or vice versa. Or you have to sit in it and drive it yourself, because they try to make seats fit everyone. Some of them don't. Your body doesn't like every seat.
When we got our Ioniq 5, I was so excited when I first drove it about the everything it did, and then when we got it, I was like, oh no, is this uncomfortable? Like initially, I'm like, this is brand new, I'm like, is this uncomfortable? But then I drove it to like Palm Springs and back, like a week or two later, like, nah, this is fine. But there was like a concern. I'm like, oh no, we're going to use this for road trips, and I'm going to be uncomfortable on long drives.
Yeah, no, and that's a valid concern. And if what you don't want is a car that you're going to be driving for the next several years that you can't get comfortable in the seat. So like I said, every body is different. People have different proportions. Some people have longer torsos and shorter legs. Some are the opposite. Some are all long. Some are all short. They're different widths and different shapes. So whatever you are interested in, make sure at the very least you sit in it in the showroom, but preferably, take it for a test drive before, and, try adjusting your seating position, make sure that you can get comfortable in it. And for whatever reason, the Highlander seat just didn't do it for me.
Okay, fair enough.
But again, that's me. It for most other people, it might be just fine. The rest of the interior was very nice. It's otherwise a nice, pleasant place to be. Nice big screen. It's got support for wireless Android Auto and CarPlay, and that all worked well. Had no issues with any of that. The one that I had was finished in the Ruby Flare Pearl paint. So it's a red, sort of a darker red, that a lot of automakers now have heard our incessant repetition of the fact that Mazda Soul Crystal Red is the best color on the market. And so other automakers are starting to try to do something similar to that. It's not quite like the Soul Crystal Red, but it's a very nice red. And I strongly recommend that, anybody who's interested in buying something like, or whatever you buy, get an interesting color. Don't get something boring, please. Unless you're planning to use it as a livery vehicle, get something interesting that you will like to look at for the next several years. Because not only do you have to walk up to it and see it in your driveway or your garage, as well as sit in it, get something interesting. And it's better for everybody if we have more interesting cars to look at.
Yes.
We don't just want to live in a monochrome world, do we?
No, we want pretty colors.
Yeah, exactly. So, as I said, it's a 3-row. The XSE has second row captain's chairs. So there's a gap in between the two second row seats, which was only slightly annoying, when I put the seat cover in there to put Morty in there to go pick up Patty, because then you got this gap that they have to step over that they can't see because the seat cover's over it. That's a relatively minor annoyance. Otherwise it was good. It was it handles reasonably well. It's not overly large, so you can maneuver it around. And the driving dynamics are, of all Toyotas have gotten a lot better over the years. So, if you're looking for a larger crossover that has occasional use third row seats, or just something, that'll handle up to 5 people with a really large cargo area, because one thing with the third row up, you have very little cargo space behind the third row. Mm-hmm. Which, again, if you need a 3-row SUV that has more cargo area in the back, and, a more useful third row, Toyota's got you covered there with the Grand Highlander or the Lexus TX. So this is really, more of a 2-row SUV with occasional third row, or just a really big cargo area. And that's kind of the way I would pitch this is, big cargo area and just leave that third row folded down. Strangely enough, this was one of the rare occasions when I did not get a Monroney with it. I did the build on the Toyota website this morning. He said it had the Ruby Flare Pearl paint, which is a $425 option. Well worth it. The black mixed media interior. Not quite sure what that means. It's like it's partially leather, but not all leather. The 2.4 liter turbo, all-wheel drive on the XSE, and 8-speed automatic. The 12.3 inch infotainment system, all in, came to $49,215. You want to take guesses on the delivery charge?
$1,295.
Oh, I thought say that.
I took it. Whatever you say is going to be right because now I mocked you.
$1,395.
Robbie wins it. It's $1,450.
Oh, wow.
$1,450.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it's got to come all the way from Georgetown, Kentucky to wherever you are. So
in Kentucky,
that's true.
Big mountains in Kentucky to get through.
Mm-hmm. So that is the 2024 Toyota Highlander XSE. Smartphones have gotten way more expensive over the past decade, and all it takes is one impact on a hard floor to make you wish you had spent a few bucks to put a case on it. Going online without ExpressVPN is like not having a case for your phone, and it only costs a few dollars a month. Nicole, Robbie, and I travel a lot for our work, and we spend a lot of time in hotels, coffee shops, airplanes, and of course the Delta Sky Club. Connecting to the Wi-Fi in any public places with shared Wi-Fi puts your data at risk because bad actors could be intercepting what you send and using it to steal from you. It only takes some cheap hardware to intercept Wi-Fi data, and even a smart preteen can do it. Hackers can make up to $1,000 per victim selling personal information on the dark web. ExpressVPN stops the bad guys by creating a secure, encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet. ExpressVPN uses state-of-the-art encryption that would take a supercomputer up to 1 billion years to crack. I have ExpressVPN on all my devices, including a MacBook Pro, Windows laptops and desktops, and Android and iOS phones and laptops, or tablets. When I want to be secure, I just launch the app, click once to connect, and my data is secure. As I said, I travel a lot for my work, and I have to connect to countless public Wi-Fi networks in many countries. I have ExpressVPN on all my connected devices so that whoever else is on the same network can't see any of my data. That's important because I often have to check banks, credit card accounts, and transmit client data that might be sensitive, as well as filing articles on news that might be under embargo. ExpressVPN protects all of it, and I've been paying for my own account for years. Secure your online data today by visiting expressvpn.com/wheelbearings. That's expressvpn.com/wheelbearings, and you can get an extra 4 months for free. expressvpn.com/wheelbearings.
All you homeowners have unique needs. Some feel the need to leave up holiday decorations year-round. Others have the need to use their garage as practice space for their new metal band. And because each homeowner has unique needs, Geico helps you get the right coverage for your home and what's in it. That way, you get exactly what's right for you, even if your needs are unique. Get more with Geico.
Okay.
All right, let's move on to some other stuff.
All right. I just lost my show notes. Sorry. The screen. Right. I went to click open. I click close. Hold on. I'll be back. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, let's talk about Lucid first. Lucid had, I think, an investor day this week. They had a bunch of news there. Any thoughts on this one, Robbie?
Well, I mean, I'm happy that they're going to, so people are, the NACS transition has hit a little bit of I don't think it's a speed bump. I think there's a little concern with some automakers just because of what happened with Tesla and the supercharger network, where he sort of laid most of the people off. But it's I think people, there should be a realization that it's more than Tesla that's doing this, and I think Lucid understands that. Hyundai understands that. Hyundai also did this, but the gravity is coming with NACS, so
and it's going to start production in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, it's going to start production, which America loves an SUV, and America wants to be able to charge their their vehicles. So so because of that, I think it's a good move for them, as a company that's had some. When you're going after the Germans, which is something that Peter Rawlinson has said again and again and again. He wants to go after the luxury German, the BMWs, the Mercedes-Benz, the Audis of the world. That's you're going after some pretty storied nameplates. It's tough to break through that. And while I hear like normal people who aren't really car people talk about the Lucid Air and say how beautiful it is, normal people don't have Lucid Air type money. So that's and of course normal people will still want, if they do have that money, they still want an SUV, which and so now and of course now they have a vehicle that's a smaller SUV. That's, I think they were saying like 50,000 was the. That's coming at some point. Which I think
2026 is the target date for that.
Yeah. So they gave a little teaser of it, and I'm sure it's going to look beautiful. The Lucids look really nice. The efficiency and the engineering of Lucid is second to none at this point, really. To be honest, when you take all the people who, it's funny because they're super talented engineers, but they're all super talented engineers that worked at Tesla. And I wonder how much of it is powered by spite.
I would say there's just a touch
little
of that.
Just a little. He didn't. And so I think it's a little. Sometimes I think most of us as humans have done something good in our lives out of spite. Just to sort of show someone, you're like, you know what? I'm gonna graduate college, or I'm gonna get this really good job, or I'm gonna be a better person. Something really weird. And it's a very weird reason to do things, but I think it is a reason that some people do things. But yeah, and maybe not spite, maybe a little bit spite, but also knowing, having that base and saying, we can do better. We can do better because we care a bit more about engineering. We're going to go deeper. We're going to be more efficient. We're going to like having that baseline to say, I could do better than this with the resources I had at that time. And so yeah, I think I don't want Lucid going anywhere. American car company, and sell building cars in the United States. Same thing with Tesla. I don't want Tesla going anywhere. American car company, building cars in the United States. But it can, for Lucid doesn't have that what Tesla had was like, oh, look at the shiny new thing. So they have to do better, essentially.
It's hard to be the shiny new thing, 10 years after the original shiny new thing.
Shiny new thing that they helped build. Like the people who are there, essentially created. They essentially like, we made the Model S and then we all left.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Peter Rawlinson was the chief engineer on the Model S and then left Tesla to join what became Lucid. And, he's done, from an engineering perspective, Lucid has done amazing work.
It's so crazy. Like, hey, look at, this is the engine and the the gearbox. And it's like, 3 pounds or something really small. It's not 3 pounds, but it's, and then it's like, oh, it's super efficient. And then we did this, and we're using 900 volt architecture. When they're doing all the like really great like engineering things, but
well, just as an example, in their presentation, they talked about the Lucid Air drive unit, 671 horsepower. It weighs 76 kilograms. And for those who are not bilingual in units, that's about 160 pounds or about 175 pounds. And so that's 8.8 horsepower per kilogram. And then their chart, they showed 3 competitors, competitors A, B, and C that are not specifically identified. But they are, 300, competitor A is 335 horsepower and weighs 96 kilograms. So 20 kilograms more. B is 344 horsepower, weighs 125 kilograms. I think that's the Audi for that one. And then C is 362 horsepower and weighs 153 kilograms. So, it's a huge difference. And
they are like they're like the McLaren of electric vehicles.
Yes.
Just like super, super nerdy engineers doing incredible, super nerdy things.
Yeah. And that's why, Aston Martin decided, when they start building electric vehicles in a couple of years, they're going to use Lucid powertrains. Lucid is going to supply the powertrains for Aston Martin's electric vehicles. So it's, and then, they talked about their next generation Atlas drive unit, which is going to be even smaller and lighter than the current one. And that's what it's eventually going to be used in the Air and the Gravity as well, but also it's going to debut in the midsize model you talked about, which is supposed to be coming in 2026, I think.
Yeah, I'm surprised more companies who are sort of slow, it makes a lot of sense for Aston Martin, but I think a lot of these sort of smaller companies that are like, oh, we have to go EV at some point, they should definitely be talking to Lucid, because it feels like, oh, I can still get that sort of, it doesn't weigh as much. You're giving them a lot more power, and you're not beholden to the Germans, essentially. I mean, Aston Martin was buying motors from Mercedes for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
And now they can say, oh well, now we're not quite as beholden to a giant automaker that's also eating our lunch.
Okay. Anything else on Lucid before we move on?
It is fun to sit in that frunk.
Sit in the frunk?
And the Gravity?
And the Gravity, they're like, hey, come sit in the frunk. You're like, all right. And you sat here like, oh, this is kind of nice.
Yeah, they have optional like seat pads that go into the frunk of the Gravity. So there's when they did the unveil of the Gravity last year at the LA Auto Show, they had Peter and Derek Jenkins, the head of design for Lucid, sitting together in the frunk of the Gravity.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, doing a little frunk gating.
Yeah, a little front gating.
All right. Nicole.
Yes.
You went to a thing called Heels and Wheels.
I did. So Heels and Wheels, it's been running, I want to say it started in 2011, 2012, run by this fantastic woman. Her name's Christine Overstreet. She does Overstreet Events, I believe is the name of her company. And she's the person who handles a lot of the stuff that we do when we're on these drive programs. And she makes sure the cars are there and that they're all ready to go and that we get back and forth from the airport. Many years ago, she was sort of watching how things were going. I was like, gosh, there's a lot of these programs. There aren't a lot of women, and women aren't encouraged. And again, this is like 12 years ago now, to really participate and take part. So she came up with Heels and Wheels as a way to just bring female journalists together, and a multi-OEM event to give everybody an opportunity to get behind the wheel of a variety of cars for a short period of time. It's a one-day event, so it's not like you're doing full-day drives of all these. And to sort of have some camaraderie among the women that are there. And it's an interesting group because it changes a little bit each year. And she does it, I think, every other year at this point. And there's a mix of journalists and there's a mix of lifestyle folks, which is kind of fun. It can be an interesting mix. You get a lot of different perspectives. And as a journalist, it's fun to see the reaction of people who don't drive cars as much to some of these cars. And there's a range of vehicles there. Like there are more mass market cars, like a Toyota, there was a Toyota Camry there. There's some Volvos, there's a Mazda. Then you flip around and you have like real high-end cars. There's a DBX 707, there's a McLaren, so you have things from stuff that all of us drive all the time to stuff that most of us never ever even get to see, much less drive. And so it was a great opportunity to try and experience some of these. Some, really quick drive. First time I've ever managed to get my butt into the driver's seat of a McLaren for a very short drive, but still super fun. I'm like, hey, get it. Hey, this is all right. Okay.
This is all right. You get in the McLaren, you're like, this is all nice.
I can
Again, good job, super nerds.
Yeah, good job, all you engineering nerdy people. This is what you said it was. So that was fun. And I drove, and the Aston Martin was ridiculous because it was bright orange. I mean, orange on the inside, orange on the outside. Anything that could be made orange on that car was orange. I'm surprised it didn't find a way to come up with orange rubber for the tires. Like everything was orange.
I think that's available as an extra cost option.
An extra cost? Probably. I'm sure Aston Martin would do it for you if they could find a way and you wanted to pay for it. So it's a really neat event. And I thoroughly enjoy it. There's a sense of camaraderie there. And to be honest, and this isn't the case for me, but I do hear it from, when you're in a room with a bunch of gearheads, and some of you guys, case in point, you two, are really easy to deal with and really nice. And I feel like if someone asks a question, you're never going to look down at a woman and do that like, oh gosh, I can't believe she
asked. Again with the girls.
But I'm here to tell you
that they have cooties,
right? That's not the case with all the guys in the industry. I will say the vast majority are like you guys, in that there is no judgment when someone asks a question. And I feel like there never should be judgment, because at some point, none of us knew anything. At some point, you didn't know what those things were. At some point, I didn't know what these things were. So you kind of have to learn. But some women are intimidated by that, especially I think sometimes on the lifestyle front. They're trying to learn. They're trying to provide good information. But when they ask a question and you hear the sigh, or you see the eye roll, or you hear the comment, or the sort of like, ugh,
I can't believe you're asking that.
Right?
I think that does happen a lot, especially with the traditional automotive dudes.
Exactly.
Or the lifestyle ladies, because they're like, oh, you shouldn't even be here.
Right?
And now you're asking this stupid question. I'm like, you know what? I probably asked that stupid question like 4 years ago. No one gave me any crap about it.
And that's exactly it, Robbie. No one would give you crap about it. You could be like, I don't understand. What is a CVT? I don't know what that means. And and they're just going to be like, he doesn't know, whatever, and go on. A woman could ask that question, especially in, like a lifestyle person, like, oh my gosh, why is she here? Well, she's never going to learn what that means if you don't give her a chance to ask the questions.
Yeah.
So this is sort of a judgment-free zone for women. We're all, and it's, I went to a girls' high school, private girls' high school that I did not want to go to because there's no boys. Like, why would you want to go to school without boys around when you're you're a teenager, you want them there. But it was kind of neat that we sort of become.
I do have some friends who would have been very happy at that high school.
Okay, you know what I mean. So, and it was interesting because after the fact, I was like, that was kind of cool in a way, because you remove the trying to look cool in front of the boys, or trying to not to say the wrong thing, or trying not to be judged by them. It's just a bunch of girls. You don't care. The same thing happens in Heels and Wheels, and it's a really nice. It's a nice event. It's a fun event. It gives you a connection with all these automakers, and I always appreciate that they all come out and support this and support giving women an opportunity to drive this. And I know some people are going to be judgy and say like, well, if you can't handle it, no, but you shouldn't have to handle it all the time. This gives an opportunity to not have to handle it for a change, to not have to face that sort of judgment, and to let everybody be supportive and learn about cars, and to also have an event where it's not just about Mazda or not just about Aston or not just about Toyota. It's about all of them. So there's reps from all these companies. There's cars from all these companies. It's a really fun day. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. Every time she runs it, I'm so excited when I get the invite because it's always just a fun, engaging time. It's great people and great cars. Yeah.
So let me ask you a question, Nicole. Does it feel to you like there are more women in the space now than there used to be?
Yes and no. I think that there are more women in this space who truly do know what they're talking about and present a really good point of view from an influencer side, from a lifestyle side, whatever you want to call that non-traditional media side. And I feel like they know their stuff. Like people look down on some of that, but they know their stuff and they have a very specific audience. And I think that's great. I'm not sure there's more on the journalist side because I think maybe a few more, maybe some more, but still it's not unusual or weird for me to be the only woman on a drive program on my wave. Like the only other women in the room might be like the marketing folks or the people that are doing support or like engineers or whatever, people from the company. There's a good number of times that I am the only woman, or maybe there's two women. I mean, if there's like 4 or 5 women on a wave, sometimes like, woohoo, look at all of us. I think there's a small number more, but I don't think there's a huge number more than there were, because I still think there's a certain amount of gatekeeping. And I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm bitching and moaning about it, because I think it's getting better. But I think the only way you realize these things happen is to acknowledge that these things happen.
Yeah.
So, and like I said, you guys, that's not you. Most of the men in industry, it's not you. The industry has changed a lot, but I still think it has a way to go. So I think it's more receptive. I think there's less of the sort of eye roll from the old school crowd when a woman asks a question, but I still don't think I don't think there's as many women, and I think there's still a little bit of gatekeeping there.
Okay.
I don't think there's many young people, because the industry sort of collapsed, the automotive like journalism industry. Like it's so many, so there's not a lot of new people in it. That's another big thing. So a lot of young like women and young men who would have gotten into it have like looked at the industry or they just can't get in because it's so like, even for people who've been doing it for a long time, it's really hard to keep doing it, because you look at the financial, like how much money am I making? That's how much money I would have made in the 90s. That's that sort of thing. Like you have to be extremely
really committed.
Yeah. And to stick with it. And then just sort of like, okay, how can I make this work? And it only works if you've been here for a long time, because you're getting paid like, a premium versus like someone young who's going to make, more money at in and out, to be honest.
I think that's the thing. It's like for anybody, literally anybody looking to do this. If you're just out of school and you're like, okay, I'm going to go pursue this, you were in for, it's tough. Like it's hard to break into this. It's hard to, and then once you break in, depending on where you decide to write or what you decide to write, you can, this is a side hustle gig for a lot of years before people can turn it into an actual gig. Yeah. And I think that keeps younger folks from moving in general, like you said, Rami. And as people who are older, just stepping out, doing other things, retiring, moving on, there aren't as many people to fill those shoes. And it's so I think that the women level of women in the industry is kind of static, partly because of that, because it's not suddenly like there's all these doors fling open for everybody in general. There's not a lot. So it still sort of stays sort of male dominated, and which I'm not averse to, but what's that?
We're stuck with the same people.
We're stuck with the same people. So but so this is a great opportunity. I think it's a neat opportunity to bring women together. And honestly, it does let us be cheerleaders for each other. You make great connections. I mean, we all meet people at these events. We all met at different events during the years before we were doing this podcast. We knew each other for other reasons. It lets you network a lot, and it lets women network and sort of support each other. And I'm all for supporting women who are trying to make a go of this and are trying to find their footing in this industry. And I think that's a great thing.
Yeah, and for me, in my role, I I have kind of two different roles in this stuff, both as a journalist and also as an industry analyst. And so I write a lot of stuff, but I also get a lot of calls from journalists, to get comment and ask questions about stuff. And one of the things that I always try to do is, start, if I don't really know the person who's calling me that well, I try to spend some time. I don't try to just, give them a quick soundbite and, get on with my day. I try to help, understand, kind of where they're coming from, what their level of understanding is, and then spend the time to actually, to educate them, and not, I try really hard not to be that mansplaining guy, but, I try to, get people up to speed on because, my background obviously is more from the technology side, as an engineer, I understand the technology. And so I want to try and help everybody else to understand the underpinnings of this stuff, so that when they write their stories, they can write, from an educated perspective and try to be more accurate.
Well, I think the same. I know you worry about mansplaining, which probably means you very rarely do it. And I think, honestly, most women know the difference between when someone is like, I have knowledge I'm trying to share with you that I think you might not have, and I'm trying to share with you, as opposed to, hold on one second, let me tell you, little lady. There's a difference in tone. And I
can't believe you don't know about this insane complex thing, which, by the way, especially with a lot of the hydrogen and EV powertrain stuff, a lot of automotive journalists, and including dudes, don't know.
Yeah, and it's not just women. It's most of the men that I deal with in the in the media don't, because most of them are not engineers. And I don't blame them for not understanding it. Hell, most average people don't understand this stuff, and most reporters, most journalists, tend to come from a more generalist background. They're not coming from a deep automotive technology background. So I ask them some questions first to gauge, kind of what's their level of understanding. And if it seems like they want to understand, then I take the time to help them understand.
Yeah. And that's how it works. I mean, when I first started doing this, too long ago now, I remember, because there were things I didn't quite feel like I knew enough, but every now and then something technical would come up in a presentation. I remember thinking, like, I didn't quite follow that little tidbit. That one little thing kind of escaped me. And I was reluctant to say it. Like, I don't want to say in front of the whole room, like, okay, nobody knows who I am here. If I ask this question, I'm going to look like an idiot. My habit was I'd either ask a really nice journalist in the room, if there was a guy that seemed like he was like decent, it was good, or I would just go and ask after the fact. I'd be like, hey, you guys mentioned this. Could your engineer explain this to me? And that's how I learned, because it is hard to ask those questions when you feel like somebody's going to look down on you. Now I just ask and they'd be like, to heck with all you guys. I don't know what that means. I'm asking. Yeah. But when you're new, that's harder to do.
Because you realize now that probably 3/4 of the people in the room didn't understand that either.
Same thing. They're like, wait, what did he say? Yeah, what did he say? What did she say? So now, but when you're in a different position, it's not as easy for everybody, depending on your experience and how comfortable you feel. So yeah,
it's like being in a classroom. It's the same thing. And to your point, about having gone to an all girls high school, part of the reason why that they've had all girls schools. I mean, there's other reasons, but one of the reasons is because of the fact that particularly when you have a mixed environment of boys and girls, oftentimes because of the way our society is,
exactly,
girls are intimidated to ask those questions, and they shouldn't be.
Right.
We shouldn't be treating girls that way. Everybody should be free to ask the questions to understand, because just as it is in a media briefing, it's the same thing in high school. Most of those boys don't understand that stuff any better than the girls do. They're just too tough to admit
it. And it's like you said,
to understand. They're like, I'm not going to say anything.
It's like,
and then later on, I'm like talking to them. They're like, yeah, and then they said this thing. I'm like, yeah, that means this. They're like, oh, all right. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. I just want to make sure you know.
Right? And it is a society thing. Guys are more likely to ask the question. Women are not. Guys are less likely to be judged for the question as a rule, where the women in automotive are more likely to be judged. Again, just want to make it totally clear, not everybody. Most of the guys are fine. A huge number of them are fine. But all it takes is in a room for one guy to do that, like, and then you feel like you feel it. You feel it to your soul. And that's hard. So that's what Heels and Wheels eliminates that. And
does it have a theme song? Because it sounds like it needs one.
Does it have a theme song? I don't know.
Heels and Wheels.
Right one, you do.
Heels and Wheels. No,
write us the theme song, Robin. Christine would be like,
I don't know if I've met this person. I'm just randomly sending them like, here's 4 versions of a song I wrote about Heels and Wheels. Like,
come from?
who is this guy?
She'd laugh.
Who's this weirdo sending me? Block.
Yeah, who is this lunatic?
All right, let's move on. Let's see. Have either of you two ever ridden a bicycle with anti-lock brakes?
Wait, I'm thinking.
No.
Have any of the bikes I've ridden have anti-lock brakes?
Definitely not.
No, but motorcycles. I have ridden motorcycles with anti-lock brakes, and having ridden motorcycles for like most of my life without anti-lock brakes, it's amazing.
Have either of you two ever gone over the handlebars on a bicycle?
Oh yeah,
very little. Oh yeah, sure. Like
hundreds of times, probably.
In the elbows. Yeah, when you're a kid.
I've had gravel like shoved into my fingers, like had to be picked out with like tweezers. Yeah,
you're doing that once.
And I think we're all old enough to remember the days before anybody rode or wore bike helmets, right? So,
oh gosh,
well,
safety. What was that? Our brains are all scrambled, but we're like, we were fine.
It's amazing we're able to function at all, given some of the ridiculous things we did as kids, I'm sure. Well, this week, Bosch, actually, 3 of the big suppliers in the area here had events. I went to 2 of them with Magna and with Bosch. Bosch did their annual mobility experience event at their proving grounds in Flat Rock, Michigan. They showed off a bunch of the technologies that they're working on. And one of the cool things that we got to see and actually try out was an ABS system that they've developed for e-bikes. Bosch builds a lot of e-bike systems. Bosch doesn't build bikes, but they build the motors, they build the inverters, they put together the batteries, do a lot of the hardware that's used on e-bikes from a lot of different brands. I think globally there's over 100 different e-bike brands that use Bosch components. And so we got to try out a couple of bikes with Bosch ABS on them, which was really cool.
Yeah.
We rode up, at the Bosch proving grounds. They have, a traction control hill that they use for testing traction control and slippery conditions. And so, we rode the e-bikes up the hill and then turned around and came back, and then hammered the brakes, and bike just stops nice and smooth. No flying over the handlebars or anything like that. It was amazing.
Does it really stop smoothly enough that you don't feel like you're going to, gravel under your finger going over the handlebars? It really stops you smoothly?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm really curious about this because I feel like that would be, it's one thing when your car does it, you're just sitting in a seat. It'd be another thing on 2 wheels.
Yeah.
It's like, oh,
yeah.
It is. I will tell you, it's great on motorcycles.
Yeah.
Like my Vespa, I have a 250. It's the year before anti-lock brakes, and there have been a few close calls because wet roads in San Francisco and people don't pay attention, where you put on the brakes and all of a sudden you're just sliding into a car and you're like, okay. Oh gosh, I stopped. Thank God.
So the ABS is only on the front brakes. Because what they found was, especially because a lot of the bikes, are sort of mountain bike style. And, a lot of cyclists, said, they like to have the ability, especially, if they're riding on a trail, to, slide the back end a little bit, to help them with turning. And so they only put you do most of your braking with the front wheel anyway. But on a bike, if you over brake on the front wheel, you said you can flip the thing over. And so it's a hydraulic brake system, so it's a little more expensive. It's more expensive than a typical bike brake system, which is just cable brakes, mechanical cable brakes. But with the hydraulic brakes, and works basically the same as ABS on your car. There's a couple of solenoid valves in there. There's a little tiny ECU that controls it, and there's a wheel speed sensor on both wheels. So it compares the front and rear wheels, the wheel speeds, and if it senses that you're potentially locking up, then it reduces some of the brake pressure on the front wheels so that it doesn't lock up and you don't go over the handlebars. So pretty cool feature. And unfortunately, the bikes that you'll find this on, tend to be in the, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 and up range. Yeah, they're not cheap. But if you want something that, that you can ride, that's going to be safe, it's definitely worth the investment.
I mean, this technology always ends up on the the high end of something, and then it works its way down to regular people's stuff. Did you get to drive a cargo bike with it?
I didn't get a chance to ride the cargo bike. They had one.
Everyone was riding it, weren't they?
Yeah. So
damn it. Everyone wants a cargo bike.
Yeah.
I'm going to get
actually took a spill on the cargo bike, but
who?
Paul Eisenstein.
Oh
gosh.
Paul.
Yeah. He was okay.
Or is
all right.
With a broken arm next time I see him?
No, nothing broken. Just a little sore.
Who's gonna take care of pride? This is pride.
But yeah, they did have one, but I didn't ride that. I didn't get a chance to ride that one. Some of the other stuff that Bosch had, they were demoing some other interesting technologies. They had a parking system, a park anywhere system for trailering, which involved basically on the touchscreen. It's using the surround view cameras, and then you can drag on the touchscreen to where you want the vehicle to be parked, with the trailer to be parked, and then you activate it, and then just kind of hover your foot over the brake pedal just to control the speed, and then the vehicle, the tow vehicle, and the trailer will maneuver itself into that space automatically.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's neat.
It's so weird, your brain, it's such a different part of your brain, because your brain's like, oh, I'll just turn left. No, you don't.
Mm-hmm.
You go right first, and then you go left, and then you adjust, and then
if you go too far, you jackknife, and
and then what's great is that a lot of people, they trailer 5 times a year, so you're not getting a lot of experience doing that. So this is pretty great, especially when you're like, oh, we got to go to the KOA, or I got to go park in a this camping spot, or I got to pull in to drop off my boat, and you don't do it very often. So now and of course there's also the anxiety of everyone watching.
Yeah.
Everyone's staring at you.
Yeah.
I don't think this person knows what they're doing.
And it worked really well. And, if you've probably both gotten a chance to try Ford's Pro Trailer Backup Assist.
Yeah.
I haven't.
Oh, okay.
No, wait.
You haven't?
Oh, no, I think I have. Actually, I have.
Yeah.
Never mind. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and
it was a while ago.
And that certainly makes it easier, if you're not an experienced tower. But, this takes it to a whole new level. It's way better. So it was very nice way to maneuver with a trailer and back into a parking space with a trailer.
Cool.
They also had what they call their VDC 2.0, Vehicle Dynamics Control. So this is their stability control system. They actually had it installed on a Lucid Air. And so, Nicole, you were talking earlier about, the lane change on the Nautilus being kind of abrupt. Yeah. And I think, part of the reason for that is because traditional stability control systems are reactive. It waits, it's measuring and waiting until you get beyond a certain threshold, and then kind of tries to bring it back into that range, into the proper range. And so that, depending on how well you do that, it can be kind of abrupt. And what they've done with this VDC 2.0 is in addition to the traditional reactive control, they're also doing proactive control. So, what they've done is they're modeling, they're looking at all the different sensor signals. So they're looking at, the vehicle accelerometers, they're looking at the steering angle input, the vehicle speed, the yaw rate, all the different signals, the accelerator, pedal position, brakes, and rather than waiting until the car gets into an unstable region, they're trying to keep it in the stable region of control to begin with, to try and keep it out of the unstable region to begin with.
So there's no having to overcorrect or suddenly correct. It's just lightly correct all the time.
It already, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So we tried it with, just doing a quick double lane change, like an evasive maneuver, there's a tire or, something sitting in the road, and you got to steer to the, 60 miles an hour, and you steer to the left and then steer right back to the right to get out of the oncoming traffic. And we did that with the standard system first. And, it, at that speed, at highway speeds, it can easily get, start to get the back end swinging around and start to feel pretty unstable, even with stability control. With the new system, the proactive system enabled, it's like boom, boom, easy, not a problem at all. The difference was pretty impressive.
Very cool.
Yeah. And they actually already have it on production. And I'm trying to remember which vehicle they said it was in production on now, but it's on some vehicles now, and over the next several years, it'll be coming to a lot more vehicles. This new approach to the software. And then one other thing, one of the many other things, I'm not going to go through all the things, but one other thing that they showed us that was really cool was their steer-by-wire system. So like the Tesla Cybertruck, where there's no mechanical connection between the steering wheel and the front wheels and the steering rack at the front wheels. Same thing here. No mechanical connection there. And if you've ever hit the brakes, and you're on a road, where maybe, you're on split surface conditions where maybe, one side is on the gravel shoulder, the other side's on the pavement, or in the wintertime, if you've got, snow and ice on one side and the other side wheels are on the pavement. That's what they call a split mu surface. So mu is the coefficient of friction. And with traditionally with braking on that kind of surface, with the ABS, ideally what you want to do is you want to use all the brakes on the one side of the car to slow it down as much as possible. But if you do that, if you put, full brakes on one side of the car and no brakes on the other side of the car, that causes forces on the car that make it want to spin. And so the way that we would traditionally control on a split mu surface is as soon as you detect that one side is on a slippery surface and the other side's not, then it would underbrake the wheels on the high traction side, so the car doesn't spin. Mm-hmm. And then you gradually ramp up the brake pressure on the high traction side as the car slows down, and that makes it a lot more stable for drivers. But what that also does is it means your stopping distance is going to be a lot longer because you're underbraking the side that could actually use the brakes. And so when you're calibrating ABS, one of the challenges is always trying to find the right balance where you get as much braking force as you can, but it can still be controlled by the driver, because most drivers, don't have the kind of experience to be able to really aggressively correct the steering when it wants to spin like that. Mm-hmm. And so with the steer-by-wire system, because they can control the angle of the wheels that are steering independently of what the driver is doing at the steering wheel, what they can now do is they can actually get much more aggressive with the split mu braking, and the driver doesn't actually have to do anything, because as soon as it detects the split mu braking, it's doing the steering for you to that high mu side much, much faster and much more predictably than a typical human driver can do it.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Wow. Technical stuff. That's amazing, though. That's the kind of stuff that keeps you from out of control.
Yeah. Keeps you out of the trees.
Keeps you out of the trees, which is what you want.
What in the late 80s, 90s, I remember getting sort of angry about all this safety stuff being added to cars because it changed the dynamic of a car. Because I was young and dumb and I didn't think about other people and how they're going to die. I remember anti-lock brakes, this, and this. And then you have to realize, like, no, idiot, other people don't drive, they're not driving 10/10 everywhere.
Yeah.
They don't have like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours behind the wheel. They just want to go to work.
Yeah.
They just want to like do the thing. They just want to transport their children somewhere without, and making it as safe as possible. It is pretty great. Not everyone is us.
Yeah.
Is what I'm trying to say. And it's good that there's all these, like, every time they can, like, hey, well, here's a thing that'll keep you alive, because it does the thing that, like, really, really, people who drive a lot know how to do. Except now we have the computer doing, because regular people, when are you ever going to have that experience of that happening where you're like, oh, we're going into a spin?
Well, and especially now, because so many more people are driving SUVs and pickup trucks than they were in the 1990s. It's even more of a problem. When you got a higher center of gravity, it makes vehicles even more likely to, when you are trying to control on that kind of surface, that split surface, there's a much higher likelihood that if you don't catch it fast enough, that the front wheel on the high-mu side is going to be turned, and perhaps the tire is going to roll under, and then the wheel is going to catch on the pavement, and then you're just going to flip over.
That was a big problem in my high school, because it snowed and there was a lot of ice, and everyone, like, all the cool dudes had, like, raised, like, Toyota trucks. All the cool dudes.
Yep.
And they would always come into school and, like, dude, what happened to your truck? I was driving, I hit some ice, and then one of the tires hit the pavement, and then it flipped.
There was one.
It was like all the time. It was like a constant thing, and where you're just like, I was driving, I hit some ice or I hit some snow, and then one tire hit the pavement, and bloop.
There was one program I worked on in the mid 90s that was particularly notorious for that. It was a vehicle from a Japanese automaker, an SUV, that was really terrible on those kinds of conditions.
Was it the Trooper?
Yes. Well,
all
of the Trooper and the Rodeo and the Amigo.
We had I didn't go to a regular high school. I got kicked out of high school when I was young because reasons. What? And I graduated from, like, a continuation school, which is like me and, like, unwed mothers and, like, ex-gang members from LA.
Okay,
and like hardcore stoner kids, and, like, a lot of kids who had a lot of, like, problems. But because there was only, like, 15 of us at school every day, we all had it was like a United Colors of Benetton. We're all, like, best friends, even though we all have these, like, really weird, like, backgrounds. Well, one day, like, 4 kids got into the Suzu Trooper. Also, it was at the edge of town, and we had, like, a dirt like parking lot.
Oh my god!
It was just so weird. And so these kids were driving their Suzu Trooper, and they kind of started sliding as they were coming out of the parking lot, because you're kids. And as soon as they hit the asphalt, blunk, just completely upside down. Yeah. And then we all were stuck there because there was only one road in and out, because the other side of the road went into a ditch.
Oh my god!
Way out in the middle of nowhere. But yeah, the Suzu Trooper just funk.
I'm done.
In the course of, over about a 2-year period, I think we had 6 rollovers with those things, and this is with Jeez. Trained professional test drivers and engineers that were used to it. We'd had special training for how to deal with these things, and we flipped over about 6 of those. That was the closest I ever came to flipping a vehicle. I just managed to recover it.
They were just like shoe boxes,
yeah,
but, like, really tall and so incredibly top heavy. And they were just, like, so, like, it was just such a weird, and then everyone was giving, like, the Suzuki Samurai a bunch of crap at the time, but no one was talking about the fact that the Suzu Troopers are just flipping over left and right.
Yeah. That was probably, from a vehicle dynamics standpoint, those Isuzus, the Trooper, the Rodeo, and the Amigo, and the various other branded derivatives of them that were sold, by Opel in Europe and by Honda here, as that was, the original Honda Passport was an Isuzu Rodeo. They were just horrendously bad. They were really atrocious. Fortunately, they're not around anymore. At least not building those kinds of vehicles.
Plus, vehicle dynamics is, like, they've got better. Like, most of the people who are driving these large SUVs don't realize how much the computer's keeping them from dying.
Oh yeah. With modern stability control systems, it's amazing what those things will do. All right, let's see.
I have to. I have to go. I have to go pick up video gear. Oh. My video gear pickup time is now.
Oh, okay. Go, run like the wind.
I have a big video shoot tomorrow, which it'll be on SAE, and when it happens, I'll tell you all about it. But for now, I got to go to a dark room and pick up.
Oh goodness! Okay.
Tell Peter I said hi when you see him.
Will do.
All right. See you later, Robbie.
Dark room. He's in trouble. They're sending me to a dark room. Hopefully I'll return one day.
So, Nicole, I'm sure you appreciate the idea of having your car eavesdrop on you so that it can feed you better ads, right?
Oh my gosh, this is the worst thing ever.
Is it worse than touchscreen controlled vents?
I could actually buy a car that did this. The touchscreen vents, I'm not sure. I could ignore this. This isn't in my face all the time. It's just
you could always cover up the screen.
Right.
Yeah.
So this story, the one you're talking about, Ford is seeking a patent on eavesdropping on your conversations so they can show you ads on your dash like nobody freaking wants. That's literally, there's the whole story right there in the headline.
Yep. Yeah.
What? No, I get enough ads. And the thing is, it says, I haven't even read this whole thing and I'm already aggravated with it because things that eavesdrop on my conversations just look at what I do. Like online, we've all had that, like I've searched for a new t-shirt and suddenly it's like, okay, my computer's going to start giving me ads for lingerie. That's not what I was searching. I was searching for a t-shirt. I can only imagine the kind of misplaced ads that you're going to get when it hears you, thinks you're looking for a thing and shows you the wrong thing, or you say toaster in the car and you're going to get nothing but ads for toasters for the next 2 weeks when that wasn't what you want at all. I hate this idea. I hate it, Sam.
Yeah, let me read the abstract from the patent application. In-vehicle advertisement presentation systems. Oh, and if you've never read an actual patent, they're so
hard to read.
I've had to read way too many of them over the years. In-vehicle advertisement presentation systems and methods are disclosed herein. An example method includes determining vehicle information for a trip. The vehicle information including any one or more of a current vehicle location, vehicle speed, drive mode, and or traffic information. Determining user information. The user information including any one or more of a route prediction for the trip, a speed prediction for the trip, and or a destination. Determining user preferences for advertisements from any one of more of audio signals within the vehicle. There, and that's the part.
That's
there.
the eavesdropping part. Yeah. Audio signals within the vehicle. That would be us. That'd be us.
Yeah. And or historical user data, basically wherever you might have gone before. Selecting a number of the advertisements to present to the user during the trip and providing the advertisements to the user during the trip through a human-machine interface of the vehicle.
So basically hearing that you're all talking about going for cheeseburgers and it's going to show you cheeseburgers nearby is the theory.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you an ad for cheeseburgers.
Give you an ad for In-N-Out or Steak and Shake.
This is not what I want. I don't want this. I don't want this. I don't care if other automakers want this. I hate this idea. This would make me want to turn off my infotainment screen. Like I don't want ads on my screen.
This is the kind of thing that, automakers are desperate to have people actually subscribe to the connectivity services on their vehicles to pay for OnStar or, whatever other branded service, every automaker has. This is the kind of stuff that if they actually did this, people would say, nope, not going to pay for it. I don't want my car connected. And, they'll give up other functionality to, in order to avoid getting these kinds of ads. There are certain kinds of ads, or I shouldn't say ads. There are ways that automakers could make money based on our usage that I'm perfectly fine with. Like, for example, if you're there's certain, your vehicle service reminder, for your oil change or tire rotation or whatever comes up, and the vehicle knows where you are and says, hey, would you like to schedule an appointment for your next service? And, then it could pull up, and if you say yes, it can pull up the list of here's some nearby service centers. They happen to, have some sort of deal with the manufacturer, where they either give them a slice of the revenue from that service or they've paid to be on that list. I'm fine with that. That's pretty non-intrusive. But, to actually be listening to what we're doing or saying in the car, that's going too far. I don't want ads being popped up on the screen like that.
I don't like this. Technically though, it is a patent. That doesn't mean they're going to do it. They do patent a lot of stuff just in the interest of, from what I understand, like, okay, we might not make this exact thing, but if we make some, like, we just want to make sure that we have.
Yeah, a lot of times it's defensive, to make sure that somebody else doesn't patent it and then come back to you and say, hey, we want you to pay license fees for something that you're doing. And often these patents are very broad and vague. So it might be that, but given what we've heard from automakers over the last several years about, new revenue streams that they're trying to get from connected vehicles, I think Ford really wants to do this.
I know.
I know other automakers have said they want to.
This feels like something that they would. This doesn't feel like we're just trying to cover our bases. This feels like, we really want to do this.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
Nope, not at all.
No, don't do it.
All right. Let's see. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, for the first time, is proposing new regulations for pedestrian protection in the United States. If you look at the traffic safety data from the last decade, we've talked about it before, and we've all heard that traffic fatalities have gone up in recent years. But if you look at, there's the NHTSA has a database called FARS, the Federal Accident. Basically it's a database of statistics, traffic safety statistics, Federal Accident Reporting System is what it's called.
There you go.
And so they collect all this data, and they break it down by different types of crashes, different how many fatalities did we get from vehicle occupants, from motorcyclists, from pedestrians, and and the totals and the total number of miles driven, and what you see if you look at the last decade is that overall for vehicle occupants, even though the miles that we drive has gone up, the number of people that die who were inside of a vehicle has been flat or declining. And this is a trend we've had for since the 1960s. It's been declining as vehicles have become safer. But where we're seeing all the increase in fatalities is people on the outside of the vehicle: pedestrians, bicyclists, motorcyclists. And strangely enough, that happens to have a very direct correlation to the types of vehicles that we're driving. More and more SUVs and trucks on the road, where it's harder and harder to see pedestrians around you. You're much more likely for those people to die. And if you do strike somebody with a Honda Civic versus hitting somebody with an F350 dually or F450 dually, or a Cybertruck, the chances of them dying go up exponentially.
Yeah.
And they've had pedestrian protection standards in Europe for better part of 20 years now. And it changed the way manufacturers design vehicles. So, one of the things starting in the late 2000s, one of the things that you started to see was like the way the front end of vehicles was shaped and the way the hood was set up. What they did was they designed them to have a little bit bigger gap under the hood between the top of the engine and the hood, so that if a pedestrian was struck, there was more room for the hood to deform and absorb some of that energy. So not as much energy was transferred to the pedestrian that was being struck. We've had none of that here in the U.S. We've had some benefit from the European regulations because vehicles that are sold there and here, benefit from that. But, because of the types of vehicles we increasingly tend to drive here, which is big SUVs and trucks, none of those are sold in Europe for the most part. And so, we've had, a significant increase in pedestrian fatalities. So NHTSA is finally proposing new regulations, new test procedures that simulate a head-to-hood impact and performance requirements to minimize the risk of head injury. And NHTSA estimates that the new standard would save 67 lives a year. I think that that's actually a pretty conservative number. I think it would actually probably save a lot more lives a year than that.
It'll be interesting to see, and it'll be interesting to see if they make these this testing, because right now this is a proposal, right? It hasn't actually happened.
And it'll take several years before
it's going to take some time, right? So it'll be interesting to see if the proposal happens, if it becomes the rule, and then automakers have to do it. Then we'll know it's funny. Then we'll know just how bad it was. Like we won't know until they take action, and then we can, oh no, it isn't just 67 lives. It's however many hundreds of lives. I'd like to think it will save even more than that, but even if it only saves 67 people's lives, like that's not an insignificant number. By changing how we design something and by changing how we test something. And who knows, I always think, and I think you as an engineer, Sam, you do something and you think you're going to learn one thing, but then you learn 10 other things that you didn't know you were going to learn, or you find 10 other problems that you didn't know you were going to find. So I'd be curious to see if they change these rules and then automakers start testing what things they find work, what things they find don't. It'll be interesting to see how that rolls out if the rule is actually adopted and becomes, it goes from being proposed to being a rule.
Yeah, I mean, and they've got some of the stats in here. In 2013 there were 4,779 pedestrian fatalities in the United States. In 2022 there was 7,522. That's an increase of 57%.
Yeah.
So we absolutely need to do something about this. One, unfortunately, I don't know if this is ever actually going to come to pass because right now Congress has not mandated this. And, with the Supreme Court decision in June, the so-called Chevron deference decision, the Supreme Court basically said that, if there's any ambiguity between what Congress has mandated and what regulatory agencies want to do, it used to be, for the last 40 years that courts, the original Chevron deference case in 1984, said that courts should defer to regulators when there was an inconsistency between what Congress was asking for and what regulators were asking for. That changed in June of this year. Mm-hmm. And so now courts no longer have to defer to the regulators. And so there's a strong likelihood that if NHTSA does move forward with this and without Congress having mandated it, that, courts will overrule it and say, no, you can't do this, because
it could happen. It could be overruled. Or there could be something that gets changed up. Yeah, because of that does change how these things work. So, I mean, I guess the good part about that, Sam, is that you have time between, like, it's just proposed right now. So there's time between today when it's proposed to when it might become a rule to hopefully finesse it and refine it enough that it will be it won't be unclear. You know what I mean? Maybe it'll just force it to be more clear and harder to go to court and go, yeah, this isn't clear now.
And maybe Congress will get their act together and actually do something positive on this front.
It's giving Congress a lot of credit.
We'll see. All right. What else? Do you know what Nuro is?
I am not familiar with Nuro.
Okay, so Nuro was this company in Mountain View, California. It was started by some former Waymo engineers. They were developing this little delivery bot, and so it wasn't designed to carry any passengers. It was only designed to take like groceries and packages and stuff.
Okay, so to get your groceries to your door, kind of thing. So nobody has to do it.
And they've been through a couple of generations of their vehicle, starting with the original one, the R1. And were
they actually in use, or were these just prototypes? I'm looking at this story. Were people actually getting their groceries via this somewhere?
Yeah, they were testing them in Houston, Texas. They had a program with Kroger. And also in Northern California, they were testing these.
Okay,
and
so it was
they actually did. Okay. Yeah, they actually did quite a bit with it, particularly during the early days of the pandemic. They got approval to do more testing during that period. When everybody was in lockdown and relying on deliveries. And so, the concept of the vehicle is pretty cool. It had two big compartments. It's about half the width of a normal passenger vehicle, and it could go up to 45 miles an hour. Nice concept. And they, about a year and a half ago, they introduced the third generation of this thing, which, among other things, added a front airbag on the outside of the vehicle, so that, again, if a pedestrian was struck, the airbag would inflate, to protect the pedestrian. So it was a cute little vehicle. Unfortunately, towards the end of last year, Nuro was starting to run low on cash. They paused a lot of their testing activities, and they announced this week, they had been planning to work with BYD to actually do volume manufacturing of the R3, their third generation delivery vehicle. They were going to do it. BYD has a factory in California where they build electric buses, transit buses. And so BYD was going to build these things for Nuro. And they built a few dozen of the pre-production vehicles before they stopped. And Nuro has those vehicles, and they're still doing testing with those. But they're no longer going to go forward with that program. Instead, they're pivoting. They're going to focus on licensing their automated driving system to other companies, to supply tier 1 suppliers and automakers. And they're also offering, if anybody wants to take over the delivery vehicle program, that they will license or sell that vehicle design to anybody that wants to take it over as well.
What do you think the likelihood of that happening is, though, Sam? Is somebody taking this technology and saying, we don't already have something in progress with company XYZ?
It's going to be tough. They've clearly demonstrated, that their system can work pretty well, but there's a lot of competition out there all trying to do this. There's Plus AI is another company that's doing this. I just had a conversation on Friday afternoon with another company called Helm AI. That they're all of these guys are trying to license their automated driving software to other companies, and there's only so many automakers, and a lot of the automakers are doing their own, or they're working with companies like Mobileye or Magna and Bosch. So it's going to be a tough sell. We'll see.
Yeah. You want these companies that are trying to push the boundaries of things and come up with new ways to use this technology. You kind of want them all to succeed. Like, you're sort of secretly rooting for them to have success at the same time that that it's unlikely that they can all succeed. It's becoming a very crowded market, and all these different deals that different OEMs make with different manufacturers of technology. And once they start going with one company, it's a big thing to say, oh, we changed our mind, we're shifting gears, going with someone else.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm curious to see whether they can make it. I hope in some way the technology continues and they're able to make a go of it.
Yeah, me too. But we'll see. One of the other things I went to this week was with Magna. Another, I think they are the 5th largest automotive supplier globally. And during a roundtable discussion with their CEO, Swami Kodagari, he was asked about because Magna was actually doing the manufacturing for Fisker, for the Fisker Ocean,
right?
And they also supplied a lot of the components, a lot of the systems used in the Ocean. And Magna has a division called Magna Steer in Graz, Austria, that has been doing contract manufacturing for decades. They build the Mercedes-Benz G-Wagons, they build the Toyota Supra and BMW Z4. They built the Jaguar I-Pace. They've built stuff for Aston Martin, for Porsche, for BMW, many, and also Chrysler. They used to build Chrysler minivans in the early 2000s for the European market. They would assemble them there in Austria. And so Swami was asked about whether they would do any more deals like the one they did with Fisker, where they took on a lot of the engineering, all this vehicle assembly, and supplied a lot of the components and systems for that vehicle. And he made it pretty clear that going forward they're not going to do deals like that anymore. It's like they will supply components, or they will do the vehicle manufacturing, but they don't want to overcommit on any program, especially with a startup like that. And they're going to be
really hard for them. That first, when Fisker first pulled back everything, we're building cars. No, we're not. And I remember seeing a report from Magna, and in terms of their numbers, what they expected just tanked. because they had committed to this. Part of this, our numbers were based on these really big numbers from Fisker that Fisker couldn't deliver. It was a big risk, like you said, because they're a startup. Any startup, not just Fisker, any startup is a big risk.
Yeah, they took about a $600 million hit on the
huge.
Ocean program.
Yeah.
So, and in the past, Magna has long talked about setting up a similar type of facility in North America to do contract manufacturing in North America. And he said, for the foreseeable future, that's off the table. We're not going to do that. They'll keep Magna Steer going because they've got lots of business there besides Fisker, but they're not going to expand that to North America anytime soon.
Yeah,
so
that makes sense.
Yeah, but among the interesting technologies that we saw at Magna, they showed us what they're calling a sustainable door carrier. So in your car, if you open up your door and you pull off the inner door panel of your door, where the armrest and the stuff that you see and touch, if you pull off that panel, inside of the door there's something that's known as a door carrier, and that's they mount all the stuff like your window motors and your latches and all kinds of other stuff on that carrier. And on most modern vehicles, that carrier is made of it's made of some type of plastic, and they mount the speakers and all these other components on there, and then that's bolted into the door. Well, what they've developed is a new, what they're calling their sustainable door carrier, which is made from 70 to 90% sustainable materials. It's 40% lighter. And so the traditional ones are usually injection molded, and then they have to add a bunch of various little bits and pieces to it. These new panels, they're made from a combination of natural fibers. So things like hemp and flax and assorted other materials. Let's see, hemp, flax.
There's basalt and there's jute and bamboo. Yeah, there's all sorts of different stuff. Yeah, it's kind of cool.
And so there's basically like 3 layers to this. There's an inner and an outer layer that's made from these fibers, and then a mesh that goes in between that's made from other fibers that gives it extra strength. And then they put these 3 layers together, and they put it all together with a polyurethane. They spray it with a polyurethane spray that's also made from plant materials instead of from petroleum, to seal it and bind it all together. And then they stamp it. So instead of being injection molded, they have these 3 layers that are impregnated with this natural polyurethane, and then they put it in a stamping press and heat it, cure it, and then you get the finished part coming out. And like I said, it makes it about 40% lighter than a traditional door carrier, and also has 4 times the impact resistance. So for side impact in the car, it provides extra impact resistance as well. So this is pretty cool.
That's pretty neat. I love seeing these sort of creative uses of sustainable material, like places where you wouldn't necessarily think of it.
Mm-hmm.
And where the fact that it makes it also, it's saving weight too, and it's safer. Like there's a safety element. That's pretty cool that they came. And I feel like that's probably one of those things as they engineered. It's like, wait, it's lighter. Wait, it's impact resistant. Wait, we've done a thing that does many things at once while being sustainable. Go engineers.
Yeah. And, it said, overall, in volume, the cost will be similar to the current ones. So, using sustainable materials, you get a better end product, and it's not any more expensive. So that's, it's all a benefit.
Yep, absolutely. That's really nice.
Yeah.
That's cool. I love seeing stuff like that.
All right, let's see what else. Did you see the announcement from GM and Hyundai this week?
I did see about this. The 2 of them striking a deal.
Yeah. So, GM had been working with Honda on EV stuff. They agreed to, and GM's been working with Honda on a lot of different things, on fuel cell technology. They agreed to build a couple of electric SUVs for Honda and Acura based on the Ultium platform, and they were going to do a low-cost EV together. And Honda pulled away and decided, we're not going to do that with GM. They're going to just do that themselves.
We've changed our minds.
Yeah. So now GM and Hyundai have formed. They signed a memorandum of understanding.
What a weird name for that. I know that's the word that they use, memorandum of understanding. Like some lawyer came up with that. It's ridiculous. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So, it's kind of the first stage of a partnership like this. You sign an MOU, where, you start with this and, you start to have more detailed discussions about, okay, what are we actually going to do? What sorts of stuff can we do together? And, start working out all the details. And so they haven't, said exactly all the things they're going to do, but they're looking at things like EVs, hydrogen technologies, and also internal combustion engines, and production of passenger and commercial vehicles, doing co-development and co-manufacturing.
And so, it's just looking at the sourcing things too, like the batteries, raw materials for batteries, steel, all sorts of stuff. So it's a pretty all-encompassing potential collaboration between the two in a lot of different areas.
Yeah. And, my guess is, GM is probably going to be looking to, I think, first of all, I think one of the things that they probably want to do is, with the uncertainty around, the transition to EVs and how fast that's going to happen, they still need to keep internal combustion engines around, but they don't know necessarily what the scale is going to be. So if they partner on those, they can get more scale on those and save costs. Instead of both of them developing new engines, they can just develop one, or update one set of engines and both use those. And so that's a benefit to both companies. But then on lower cost EVs, that's an area where I think Hyundai is so far having a lot more success than GM.
Absolutely.
And so I suspect that, we're going to see, some of Hyundai's next generation EV stuff migrating over to GM vehicles in the coming years as well.
It's weird because at a glance, it seems like GM's going to benefit from this more, but I'm sure on other fronts, Hyundai clearly has to see an advantage for themselves as well, or else they wouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, well, they'll certainly get more scale out of this. So again, sharing those costs between the two companies, and that'll hopefully help them be able to be more competitive against Chinese OEMs, that are increasingly moving into markets outside of China.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Let's answer a couple of listener questions and then call it a show.
Okay.
So let's see. First up, from Scott, says, listen to the show a lot. I hear a lot of talk about people not liking that Android Auto and Apple CarPlay is not being included in some new car models. I have a Chevy Bolt, love it, and use Android Auto all the time. I do wonder what you would lose if I did not have Android Auto. Doesn't audio from your phone still play without Android Auto? I think it would be a good topic to cover what is really the difference with and without or ACP, so Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. Tesla's never had it, and I don't hear much complaining about not having this. Is there a good mapping program in the vehicle? If there's a good mapping program in the vehicle, then again, what really is the difference? I think routing with charging stops would be much better, being part of the car's system than using the phones, where many could be way underpowered, old, and outdated, or just the complexity of making it work for so many different versions of phones.
Well, there's pros and cons to why they say they're doing it in the electric vehicles, specifically for GM, because yes, they're going to know exactly how many miles their car has left to go better than an app that is estimating if it doesn't sort of like one with your Chevy or whatever. But I think that what you lose is there's sort of this, it's something you're used to. The interface is something you're accustomed to. It's easy for everybody to use. And I think the integration of just overall, when you have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto is easier. I feel like trying to use the auto, like I have yet to see an OEM system, and you can disagree with me on this, Sam, that is as easy to use as just putting Apple CarPlay on there. They all work. They all have the information, but they all don't all work as well. And I think that's why people are reluctant to go back to it. And also, if you think about the systems when Apple CarPlay and Android Auto first became a thing, right? What the OEMs were offering was not good. Like it was far less. They did what they do far worse than they do right now. They have gotten much better. But I think there's a little bit of like, this is what I've been using. This is comfortable for me to use. This is an interface that I'm used to. This is a system. If you're an iPhone user, an Android user, whichever it is, you're very used to that interface. And you can get what you want with that interface in a way that is very comfortable and very intuitive. Not every automaker system is created equal, and some of them are not intuitive to use. And I think that might be my biggest complaint.
Yeah, and I think, automaker systems have gotten a lot better than they used to be. And increasingly, a lot of automakers are now using Android Automotive as their core system. Volvo and Polestar were the first. GM, Ford, that Lincoln Nautilus you were driving has Android Automotive as an Android Automotive system. Honda and Acura, Nissan is starting to do it now. So there's a lot of Android Automotive systems out there, and they have, each automaker kind of puts their own spin on it, but they all work basically the same way. And to Scott's comment about the mapping, they all use, for example, or most of them, the ones that use Google Automotive Services have Google Maps in there, and it's well integrated. And on EVs, for example, it has access to all the battery data, the vehicle efficiency data, and they've figured out how to do a much better job of estimating range, and they can figure out where charging stations are and do better routing to get you to charging stations. So there are advantages there that you wouldn't get with a projection system. One potential disadvantage is if you have more than one vehicle that are from different brands, while there are similarities with the Android Automotive systems and even the non-Android based systems, there's a lot of basic similarity in how they function. But they can be different. And with a projection system, if you have a Honda and a Nissan, or a Hyundai and a Ford, or anything else in your garage, when you plug in your phone, now the interface looks exactly the same.
Exactly.
So it's not even little differences. It's exactly the same. Once you get used to the default system, that big of a difference, I don't know. We get to play with a lot of different vehicles, a lot of different interfaces.
Yeah.
And some of them work better than others. I'm of the belief that, especially on the EVs, I think I would rather use, the embedded system, whether it's Android Automotive or something else, in order to, in most cases, at least, not always. The Hyundai and Kia systems, for example, they don't do a great job of routing to charging stations and finding charging stations. And that's something they know, and they're working on improving that. But right now, as they stand today, they're not great. So, but I think in general, certainly with the Google services stuff, I think that they work better that way, as an EV driver. If you're driving a non-EV, it's probably about a wash. The downside there is, while there are a lot of apps that you can download and run, especially media apps that you can download and run on an Android Automotive system, if you're an Apple iPhone user, there are some things that you can't get on that. Like, for example, if you're an Apple Music user, as opposed if you're a Spotify user, it's no problem. You can download the Spotify app. It works fine. But Apple Music is not available in the Android Automotive version of the Google Play Store, and that's down to Apple. It's, right. They're the ones that decide if they want their app in that store or not. And Apple, you can get Apple Music on an Android phone. You can't get it on Android Automotive. So, if you have a car with Android Automotive, come complain to Apple about why they don't have Apple Music on there. But to also to what Scott says, all these vehicles do have Bluetooth. And so you can, even if you don't have the projection system, you can stream, music or podcasts or whatever over Bluetooth to the system. So if you're an iPhone user on a GM EV with Android Automotive, you can stream it that way. It's clunkier. It can be done, but it's not as seamless as using an internal system.
I think it kind of comes down to that a little bit, though, Sam, than what you just said right there. It's not as seamless. So I know you and I are in different cars all the time, and we're constantly trying different interfaces, different case scenario. But when I get in Russ's car, Russ gets in my car. If we're Apple CarPlay, it's the same experience. It doesn't matter for us. We're used to it. If we get into a rental car that uses Apple CarPlay, same experience because we're used to it. If I'm in my friend's car and I want to put navigate, I'm like, wait, you start driving. I'm going to figure out where we're going. I'm going to connect my phone. We're going to do Apple Car. Everybody can use it. Like it's sort of a shit. You don't have to know how the other system works. I know they're getting easier and easier, but like if you're with somebody who doesn't know how the system that's not Apple CarPlay or not Android Auto works, and you have a passenger with you, it does require a minute of like, wait, what? What are we doing? So I think there's a consistency from car to car to car to car. If you're with friends, or if you're in a rental car, if you're in your husband's car, your wife's car, your kids have a car, whatever, it keeps it the same.
Yeah.
And not like you're changing cars all the time, but think about the number of times you're in your car and your wife's car, right? If they're different, they're different. That's like kind of a pain in the butt, right? If you're like, wait a minute, how does her car work? How does my car work? There's that little, so it's little, it's not dramatic, but it's a little.
It's those little paper cuts that annoy you.
Paper cuts. It's like the little paper cuts. Oh, my friend doesn't have Apple CarPlay. Shoot, how do I use this system to get us where we want to go? It's a little paper cuts. That's the difference. So it does, and like you said, in some cases, does it better by not putting your phone in and using your phone with things like figuring out charging and all that. But in other ways, it does not. I think it's that. I think it's the little paper cuts. The little paper cuts are what get you. Like the vents. The vents are little paper cuts, Sam. The little paper cuts are.
Oh, that's a big slash across the cheek.
Is that a knife across your wrist?
Yeah, that's not a paper cut. That's that's a samurai sword.
Samurai sword. The samurai sword of car defects. But yeah, so that's the difference, I think. But yeah, you're right. It's not a huge thing, and not like things just don't work, Scott. It's just that people get used to, and like the consistency of having what they're used to, and people are used to the others.
Yeah. All right. And then finally from David, it says, I've been following you since days at Autoblog with Dan. Do you know what happened today at Autoblog? So this message came in a couple of days ago, September 13th. It sounds like maybe all the staff is turning over. Why? I thought they were the best at what they did. Thanks. Keep up the good work. So I think we might have talked about this a couple of weeks ago, but
I think we did at one point.
But basically, Autoblog and Engadget were the last two brands of what was originally Weblogs Inc. Started off as a company that did a whole bunch of blogs back in, I think, 2003. Engadget started, and then shortly after, 2004, Autoblog started, and they had sites like the unofficial Apple Weblog and Download Squad, and there was about 20 different sites that were all part of the Weblogs Inc. family. That got purchased by AOL in 2006, and then over the years, AOL got acquired by Verizon, and Verizon also acquired Yahoo and Huffington Post. Or actually, AOL acquired Huffington Post, and then HuffPo and what was Weblogs Inc. got sold to Verizon, and they also bought Yahoo. They combined all those into a business unit that, for some ridiculous reason, somebody at Verizon thought, hey, let's call it Oath. And then after a few years, Verizon, a telecommunications company, decided, why are we in the media business? So they sold it off. They sold off Yahoo, what got rebranded back again just as the Yahoo Group, which is all the various Yahoo sites, and what was left of the old Weblogs Inc., which by this point was just Engadget and Autoblog. And that was a couple of years ago. And then a couple of months ago, Yahoo decided to sell off the Autoblog brand to another private equity firm. And in early August, I think, or late July, the staff at Autoblog was informed that their last day would be September 13th. This was the entire editorial staff. And we don't really know the full plans of the new owners of the Autoblog brand. Looking at the site, it appears that since September 13th, there has only actually been one new post that's gone up. They used to post, put up, 40 to 50 posts a day. There's been
Is there a new post? Oh my God. Is there a new post?
From September 14th, there's a post about the Corvette ZR1.
Wait, I see it. And there's also something about the Rivian R1S an hour ago. So
is there? Okay. So that's new.
It has changed. The site design has changed a little bit. It's changed a skosh.
Yeah. We don't really know what the plans are. Oh yeah, there's the R1S.
But that's 2 stories since the 13th, which is definitely not.
Yeah. So
what it was.
I don't know who Kyle Edward is. Who's the byline on both of the Rivian and the Corvette story are both from somebody named Carl Edward. I have no idea who that is. Never met him. For all I know, might not even be a real person. Because one of the other old Weblogs Inc. sites, TUAW, the unofficial Apple weblog, that brand was sold off by Yahoo. I think late last year or earlier this year. He's
a real person.
Huh?
He's a real person.
Do we really know that?
I mean, he's other places. If he's not a real person, he's pretending to be one pretty well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, when TUAW was sold off, the new owners, when the brand was sold off, because TUAW was shut down about a decade ago. When the brand, they started a new site called TUAW, and they posted a whole bunch of AI generated stuff. But they used the bylines of the old TUAW writers like Christina Warren, and they put their names and their pictures on these new AI generated stories. When the previous writers found out about this, they all complained very loudly on social media, and so the new owners went back and changed all the bylines to made up names from non-existent. Because it was all AI generated stuff, they just made up some names and got some AI generated headshots assigned to those names. This might be the real Kyle Edward. I don't know.
He's a real guy. Whether or not this is him, he is a real guy.
Okay, so. Right. But whether the real person is the one actually writing these stories, I have no idea. Maybe he is good. If it is you, Kyle, good luck to you. So I don't know what the long-term plan is. It's a shame. Autoblog just celebrated its 20th anniversary in June of this year. I started my professional writing career there. I was there for 4 years, and wrote, thousands of posts in that 4-year period. And I wouldn't be sitting here right now had it not been for the 4 years that I spent at Autoblog. It was a great experience. I worked with a lot of great people, and, hopefully the new owners will do something good with Autoblog.
Hopefully, fingers crossed. Yeah.
So that's it for this week. Any final thoughts?
No final thoughts from me, but I'll see you in a couple weeks. I'm going on vacation, guys. So bye.
Bye.
All you homeowners have unique needs. Some feel the need to leave up holiday decorations year-round. Others have the need to use their garage as practice space for their new metal band. And because each homeowner has unique needs, Geico helps you get the right coverage for your home and what's in it. That way, you get exactly what's right for you, even if your needs are unique. Get more with Geico.